The COVID-19 pandemic has played a disruptive role for most of the year 2020 by restricting our movement, hampering our economic activities, and ruining the livelihoods for millions across the globe. Whilst it painted a gloomy picture onshore, the world offshore had its own set of challenges. The border closures stranded over 400,000 seafarers in what was described by the International Maritime Organisation as a deep crew change crisis. Among those stuck at sea was 29-year-old William Pardoe. He spent a 6-month-long quarantine on board a 62-foot catamaran along with Captain Sam, First Mate Neil, and his friend Petra. William is now back in Dubai, where his parents live, and decided to share the 6-month-long ordeal.
We sailed a 62-foot catamaran to Thailand from Australia back in April, and we got stuck in Thailand in quarantine for 6 months, unable to leave because we couldn't enter, and it was a bureaucratic abyss that we had to escape from, and this is the story.
William and the crew had set off from Port Douglas in Australia in April 2020 towards Phuket on board the catamaran, which would have taken them 5 weeks. He was in Australia on a working holiday and made sure he left before the visa had expired. He joined the boat crew towards Thailand to fly back to Dubai. The hopes of the epidemic subsiding were dashed when border closures extended for much longer than just 5 weeks.
So back in April, when the coronavirus was starting to impose on the world, we were in Australia and we found a boat leaving, which was good because our visa was ending in Australia. Thailand was supposed to be opening in May, so that would be perfect for the 5 weeks. But then as we reached Thailand, that just got pushed back, until in November we were still there. So we spent a month in Malaysia waiting for Thailand to open, and finally we just sailed there. They took us into a marina, finally, and we were stuck in the marina, quarantined. We couldn't leave the boat. The way we got food was the Tesco delivery driver brought it to the marina. We would take it into the boat and we'd just sit in the boat and not allowed to go out anywhere. So we had a good stash from Australia. We took in the whole boat full of food, enough for 2 months. And we had a nice menu that my partner laid out, a week menu that we just rotate. We continued that. The money came from, luckily the owner paid for a stipend towards the food, so mostly the food was paid for. To begin with, in Malaysia, the captain's friends brought us supplies by dinghy, and then when we were in the marina in Thailand, then the Tesco delivery would come to the marina. Luckily there was that connection, otherwise we would be stuck. So for us, we weren't legally in Thailand, and that's the whole issue. We couldn't exit Thailand, we couldn't take a flight because we couldn't enter. So we were totally in a bureaucratic limbo. Well, it was a big enough boat for the 4 of us. It was a 62-foot catamaran. But it's like being trapped inside your apartment for 6 months without being able to go for a walk or anything like that. So it sounds okay, but it's just a prison cell. Even if it's in Thailand, it's a prison especially. My captain is still trapped in Thailand. He still hasn't escaped, and it's now nearly February. Life was very routine. We had a list of things we do. We kept ourselves sane, like reading, writing, exercise, meditation, yoga. Just check, you winning this part of the day, and that's how we kept ourselves sane. Food, like I said, the Tesco delivery came to the boat, which was good. Otherwise we'd have to break the law and go into Thailand to buy food, which is actually what a lot of boats were doing. They had no choice. They couldn't abide by the rules, so they had to do their own thing. Finally, after a month or two, there was an option to apply for crew change, where you can leave the boat and fly away. But because we were a small boat, they didn't consider us to be commercial crew, even though we were commercial crew. That's just for the big tankers. So they're very close-minded. They weren't interested in the small fry, basically. So every 2 weeks or so, there would be a flash of light where we're thinking, we could get out now. And then 2 weeks would come, and there were, again, our hopes were dashed. And so month after month we were always being cast aside and ignored. And we were dealing with the British Embassy, and the British Ambassador, the Ambassador of Phuket, the Marine Department, the Ministry of Transport, all these different officials, and they were just passing the buck all around. No one was making the decision. Even though after months and months we'd been there, we weren't allowed out. No one would take the responsibility to free us from that situation. Until finally, in end of October, we realized that no one was helping us and the rules were not working for us. So the only way to take our freedom was to take it ourselves. And so the way we escaped the situation was to take it. We stowed away on a boat that was leaving for Singapore. The captain agreed to take us. So as the customs were coming on board, we hid. And then finally we escaped. We joined the crew in international water, and in Singapore they let us in, and we were able to fly away from Singapore with a one-day visa. On the 1st of November we sailed from Phuket on board the boat heading to Singapore, where we were welcomed finally back into society. To be totally cut off from society left us hopeless, stateless, and it was such a relief to be in Changi Airport with a stamp on our passport and a ticket, and then get on that plane. Like, all the way through we were just waiting to get on that plane, and until we were sitting in that seat, nothing was for sure. And finally it came to pass after 6 months of waiting for that day.